A security officer confidently thought he knew who belonged in the world of luxury private jets. When a black woman approached, he immediately stopped her, assuming she couldn't possibly be a real passenger. But within minutes, the truth was revealed, and it left the entire airport stunned. How could such a seemingly ordinary incident spark a revolution that would change the private aviation industry? Before we dive into the story, please let us know where you're watching from. Share your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another inspiring story just for you. The story begins. The California sun was setting behind the gleaming private terminals at Los Angeles International Airport, the twilight casting a warm golden hue across the sky. Olivia Mitchell steered her modest Honda Accord into the parking lot. At 38, she had worked tirelessly to reach this position, but success had never changed her humble nature. As always, she drove herself instead of using the company's chauffeur service. Olivia glanced at her watch. 6:45 p.m. Her flight was scheduled for 7:30 p.m., giving her ample time to board the private jet and return to Atlanta after a long week of intense meetings. She opened the trunk, took out her small black suitcase and laptop bag, looking no different from any other business professional at the airport. The evening air was pleasant, a gentle breeze brushing against her skin as Olivia walked toward the private terminal entrance. She chose a simple outfit, comfortable black pants, a light blue blouse, and practical walking shoes. Olivia had long learned that comfort was more important than expensive designer clothes, especially on long flights. Her natural hair was neatly styled, projecting a professional image, and she wore only a pair of small pearl earrings, a keepsake from her grandmother. As she approached the glass doors of the terminal, Olivia smiled, reminiscing about her journey. 15 years ago, she started her career as a junior accountant at a small aviation company. Now, she was the owner of Mitchell Aviation, one of the largest private jet service companies in North America, with a fleet of 35 aircraft and operations in 12 major cities. The security lights around the terminal had just come on, casting a soft glow that reflected off the building's modern glass facade. Through the large windows, Olivia could see her company's latest Gulfstream G650 parked on the runway. The gleaming white fuselage stood out with its signature blue and silver logo. She took a deep breath, feeling a surge of pride. This was her company, her success. But as she stepped closer to the entrance, a figure suddenly emerged from the shadows. It was a security guard, a tall, burly man in a dark uniform. He raised his hand, signaling Olivia to stop. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice firm and authoritative. "This is a private terminal. Are you a passenger?" Olivia paused, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Yes, I am," she replied calmly. "I have a flight departing at 7:30. The guard's eyes narrowed slightly. "May I see your boarding pass and identification, please?" Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out her company-issued boarding pass and driver's license. The guard examined them closely, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said finally, handing back the documents, "but I'm going to need to verify your identity with the flight crew." Olivia frowned, a sense of unease creeping in. This had never happened before. She was always discreet and professional, never drawing attention to herself. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice still calm but with a hint of concern. "Just standard procedure, ma'am," the guard replied, avoiding eye contact. "We take security very seriously here." Olivia nodded slowly, a sinking feeling in her stomach. She knew what this was about. It wasn't the first time she had encountered this kind of subtle discrimination, the unspoken assumption that she didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. She watched as the guard walked away, presumably to check with the flight crew. Olivia took another deep breath, trying to compose herself. She had come too far to let this petty incident ruin her evening. A few minutes later, the guard returned, his face pale and his eyes wide with shock. He approached Olivia hesitantly, his demeanor completely different from before. "Ma'am," he stammered, his voice trembling slightly. I apologize for the inconvenience. There's been a misunderstanding." Olivia raised an eyebrow, waiting for an explanation. Seems the guard continued that you are M.S. Mitchell, the owner of Mitchell Aviation? Olivia nodded curtly. That's correct. The guard's face flushed crimson. I had no idea, he mumbled. Please, ma'am, go right ahead. Your flight is ready for boarding. Olivia didn't say a word. She simply took her boarding pass and walked through the terminal doors, leaving the stunned guard behind. As she boarded her Gulfstream G650, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. She was used to this kind of prejudice, the subtle reminders that she was different, that she didn't quite fit in. But she had learned to rise above it, to use it as fuel to prove them wrong. Olivia knew that her success was the best revenge, a testament to her hard work, intelligence, and determination. She had broken barriers, shattered stereotypes, and built an empire from the ground up. And she wasn't about to let anyone, not even a racist security guard, take that away from her. As the Gulfstream G650 soared into the night sky, Olivia looked out the window at the twinkling lights of Los Angeles below. She smiled, a quiet sense of satisfaction washing over her. She was Olivia Mitchell, a black woman who had conquered the world of private aviation, and she wasn't going anywhere. The bold blue and silver Mitchell Aviation logo on the tail, a design she had personally selected when she took over the company 5 years prior. Around her, other passengers were also entering the terminal, most of them dressed in expensive suits, pulling designer suitcases. Some were accompanied by assistants, taking care of luggage and documents. Olivia noticed that some passengers were immediately recognized by the security staff, who quickly opened the doors, greeted them, and offered assistance. In Olivia's laptop bag, her phone vibrated softly. It was a message from her mother. Will you be able to make it home for Sunday dinner? No matter how busy she was, this family tradition had never changed, even after Olivia reached the pinnacle of her career. Every Sunday, Olivia would sit at the simple dining table in her parents' small home in Atlanta, enjoying her mother's famous fried chicken and chatting about the past week. As she walked through the parking lot, she passed gleaming Mercedes, Bentleys, and Ferraris. Her Honda looked out of place among those luxurious symbols, but she didn't mind. Growing up in a working-class family, she knew the value of money. Although she could buy any car she wanted, she chose to invest in her company and employees rather than chasing flashy status symbols. The cool air from the air conditioning system gently brushed against her face as she approached the private terminal entrance. Through the glass door, she saw a new security officer standing at the checkpoint, an unfamiliar face she had never seen before. Olivia reached for her ID card and access pass, following the security procedures she had helped establish. She believed in respect and equality, even in the rules she herself had set. A group of pilots in neat uniforms walked by, politely nodding hello but not recognizing her as their leader. Olivia liked that. She had always believed that true leadership was not about being recognized everywhere, but about building a company that could operate smoothly whether she was present or not. The evening sky turned into a beautiful shade of purple-orange, reflecting through the large windows of the terminal. Olivia paused for a moment to admire the scene she never tired of. Airplanes taking off and landing, the distant roar of engines, the hustle and bustle of the ground crew. It all reminded her of why she fell in love with aviation in the first place. But Olivia had no idea that in just a few minutes, her ordinary evening would turn into a completely unexpected event. As she pulled her suitcase toward the security desk, she was about to face a situation that would not only test her patience but also spark a nationwide debate about prejudice and privilege in the aviation industry. Behind the security desk, James Cooper adjusted his newly pressed uniform for the 10th time in the past hour. Only 2 weeks into his job at the private terminal, he was still trying to impress his superiors. He watched the well-dressed executives walk through the door, trying to greet them with special attention, especially those who seemed important. Olivia Mitchell approached the security desk, pulling her simple black suitcase. Other passengers arrived in luxury cars, carrying designer luggage. James Cooper immediately changed his attitude. He straightened his back, trying to maintain a stern, authoritative look. Before she could take out her ID, he raised his hand to signal her to stop. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice rang out clearly in the quiet space of the terminal. "The entrance for the cleaning staff is on the other side of the airport. This is a private aviation area." His tone was full of feigned politeness, masking his true attitude. Olivia blinked, surprised by his words but maintaining her composure. "I'm here to board my flight," she said softly, reaching into her laptop bag to retrieve her identification. "I can show you, ma'am," Cooper interrupted, his voice louder than before. "I've been in security for many years. I know the procedures here." This was a lie. He had only been in this job for 2 months, and this was his first position at the airport. "Cleaning staff must use the designated entrance. I can't let you wander around here disturbing important customers." Some passengers in the terminal began to notice the incident. Some pulled out their phones to record, others whispered and gossiped. A young businessman in an expensive suit smirked, which made Cooper even more confident in his actions. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to explain again. "Sir, I understand you're doing your job, but I'm a passenger. If you'll allow me—" "Listen," Cooper interrupted again, stepping out from behind the desk. "I don't want to call the police, but if you don't leave here immediately, I'll have no choice." He put his hand on the radio, pretending to be powerful. A group of curious onlookers gathered nearby. Olivia noticed some people shaking their heads, but she couldn't tell if they were protesting her or Cooper's behavior. She felt her face getting hot, not from embarrassment, but from the familiar feeling of having to keep calm in an absurd situation. "What's going on here?" A voice rang out. An older woman in a pilot's uniform approached, her eyes stern. She had been watching from a distance and decided to intervene. "I'm just ensuring the security of the terminal," Cooper replied proudly. "This woman claims she's a passenger, but obviously—" He trailed off, giving a meaningful look towards the female pilot. The female pilot raised an eyebrow, about to speak, but Olivia gently raised her hand, signaling that she wanted to handle the situation herself. She had faced prejudice before and knew exactly how she wanted to deal with this. "Mr. Cooper." Olivia read his name on his name tag, her voice calm and professional. "I'll try one more time. I'm here to board my flight. I have all the necessary identification and documents. Do you want to see them? Or do you prefer to escalate this situation further?" Cooper crossed his arms, puffing out his chest defiantly. "Ma'am, I don't appreciate this attitude. I know all the regular passengers who come and go here, and you're certainly not one of them. Now, for the last time, leave the terminal before I'm forced to call security." Olivia noticed more and more people pulling out their phones to record. She also saw Mr. David, the terminal manager, walking quickly from his office towards them, his face clearly worried as he recognized her. But Cooper continued his speech, oblivious to the approaching manager. "Perhaps you're mistaken about where you need to be." His voice was clear and condescending. "This area is reserved for private aircraft owners and their guests. The main terminal—" He never had a chance to finish his sentence. Mr. David finally arrived, panting, his face showing clear panic. His usually neat appearance was a bit disheveled as he rushed across the hall, nearly knocking over a potted plant near the walkway. But before he could say anything, Cooper made things worse. "I'm calling for backup right now," Cooper declared, pulling out his radio with a dramatic gesture. He pressed the button and spoke into it with an authoritative voice. "Security team, report to the main entrance. There's an uncooperative individual refusing to leave the area." His voice echoed in the now eerily silent terminal space. Olivia stood still, holding her ID and company ownership certificate, silently watching the situation spiral out of control. She could clearly feel dozens of eyes on her. The number of phones recording the incident had now doubled. Glancing quickly at a young man's screen, she realized he was live-streaming the entire event. "Taking this to social media, sir?" Olivia tried one last time, her voice remarkably calm despite the humiliation. "If you would just look at my identification." "Stand back," Cooper ordered, raising his hand dramatically. "Security is on its way. Any sudden moves, and I'll be forced to take defensive action." He stood firmer, as if preparing for a confrontation, making some people in the crowd gasp at his overreaction. Two other security officers rushed in from two directions, their boots echoing on the shiny floor. They looked confused to see Olivia just standing quietly, pulling her luggage, looking nothing like the threat they were called to handle. A well-dressed businessman in the crowd spoke up. "This is absurd. Can't you see she's just trying to show her ID?" His face flushed with anger as he witnessed the situation. Some people in the crowd nodded in agreement, while others continued to record. Cooper turned to the man, clearly annoyed at being questioned. "Sir, I know what I'm doing. This woman clearly doesn't belong here, and I'm just protecting our high-profile clients." He emphasized the word high-profile while giving Olivia a disdainful look. She noticed Mr. David was now only a few steps away, his face completely horrified. She gently shook her head, signaling him to wait. She wanted to see how far Cooper would take this. "Ma'am," one of the reserve security officers spoke, his tone much more professional. "Could you explain the situation?" At least he seemed willing to listen, unlike Cooper. But before Olivia could answer, Cooper interrupted again. "She claims she's a passenger, Johnson, but she's clearly mistaken or trying to sneak in. I've never seen her before, and I know all our regular customers." He said this even though he had only worked here for 2 weeks. The crowd grew larger, whispers spreading everywhere. Some people shook their heads in disappointment at Cooper's behavior, while others started making calls, clearly to report what they were witnessing. The terminal was now like a stage, and this uncomfortable drama was unfolding before an increasingly large audience. Cooper continued, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "I suggest you leave immediately before we're forced to escort you out. And don't think about coming back with any fake documents. We can spot them easily." He tapped his badge lightly with an air of importance, even though it was slightly crooked. Olivia looked at her watch. Her flight was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. She should have been on the plane by now, reviewing some important documents. But instead, she was standing here, being treated like a criminal in her own terminal. The young man who was live streaming suddenly spoke up. "Hey, this stream has over 1,000 viewers already. They're asking about the name of this terminal and the security company." His announcement made Cooper stand even straighter, as if proud that his handling of the situation was being witnessed by so many people. Mr. David finally arrived, his face pale, his forehead covered in sweat. "Mr. Cooper, I need to inform—" "Don't worry, sir," Cooper interrupted, without even turning to look at his manager. "I've got the situation under control. I'm protecting our important clients from this intruder." The last word was uttered with such contempt that many people in the crowd gasped. The next few seconds would become one of the most viral moments of the year, as Cooper discovered the identity of the person he had been insulting for the past 15 minutes. Mr. David finally squeezed between Cooper and Olivia, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Cooper," he said loudly so everyone could hear, "I'd like to introduce you, Olivia Mitchell, owner and CEO of Mitchell Aviation, the company that owns this terminal and all 35 of the private jets in our fleet." The space suddenly fell into absolute silence. Cooper's face changed rapidly. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally paled as the truth gradually sank in. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but he couldn't utter a word. The radio in his hand slipped to the floor, making a loud, sharp sound. "Miss Mitchell," Mr. David continued, his voice trembling. "I can't express how sorry I am for this incident. Mr. Cooper is new here, but that can't be an excuse for—" "No way," Cooper suddenly blurted out, his voice much louder than before. "She can't be. I've seen pictures of Olivia Mitchell in the company newsletter. She—" He stopped, realizing he was only making things worse. Finally, Olivia pulled out her ID card, company ownership certificate, and pilot's license, holding them up for everyone to see. "These are the documents I've been trying to show you for the past 15 minutes, Mr. Cooper." Her voice remained remarkably calm. "Would you like to examine them now?" The crowd began to murmur, Some people who had recorded the entire incident immediately shared their videos. The young man who was live streaming exclaimed, "Guys, this is insane. The woman he was trying to kick out is the owner of this entire company." A pilot passing by suddenly stopped when he recognized Olivia. "Good evening, Ms. Mitchell." He respectfully greeted her, then turned to Cooper, his eyes full of anger. "I hope there's no problem here." He was wearing the Mitchell aviation uniform, the very outfit that Olivia had personally helped design. Cooper seemed to have lost all his strength, his legs trembling so much that he had to grab the security desk to keep his balance. The two reserve security officers he had called quickly backed away, trying to distance themselves from the situation. One quickly took off his hat and bowed to Olivia in apology. "Miss Mitchell, I didn't know. I was just trying to, I thought, please let me explain." Sweat poured down Cooper's forehead as he gradually realized his grave mistake. Olivia raised her hand, signaling him to be quiet. "Mr. Cooper, from the moment I arrived here, I tried to show you my identification. But instead of checking them, you judged me solely based on my appearance. You decided, without any evidence, that I didn't belong here." Her voice remained calm, but every word she spoke carried weight, making Cooper sink further into shame. The businessman who had spoken earlier approached Olivia. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Jonathan Reed from Sterling Investments. What happened today is completely unacceptable. I'm willing to provide testimony about what I witnessed." Many other passengers also came forward, offering to provide contact information and expressing their support. The entire terminal became abuzz with outrage at Cooper's behavior and admiration for Olivia's composure throughout the incident. Mr. David was now on the phone, probably calling the head office. His face turned even redder as he paced back and forth, repeatedly gesturing apologies to Olivia. Olivia checked her watch again, then turned to the crowd. "Thank you all for your concern and support. But now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch." She turned to Cooper, who was still leaning on the desk for balance. "Mr. Cooper, I suggest you be in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Be on time. We have many issues to discuss regarding security procedures and customer service." Olivia walked towards the terminal gate. The crowd silently parted to make way for her. Some employees recognized her and greeted her with warm smiles. Those who had never met her before watched her with a mixture of awe and embarrassment, realizing how they had treated her earlier. Cooper remained motionless behind the desk, his eyes stunned as he realized that his victim was his highest superior. The radio on the floor still crackled, another security officer asking for updates on the situation. But no one answered. Videos of the incident had spread like wildfire on social media. Cooper's world turned upside down overnight. The next morning, Olivia's office at Mitchell Aviation headquarters was busier than ever. Her phone had been ringing nonstop since the video became a viral phenomenon. Clips of the incident had garnered millions of views on various platforms, with hashtags like #MitchellAviationCO and #PrivateJetPrejudice flooding everywhere. Olivia sat at her desk, quietly reading hundreds of emails and messages. Some were from media outlets requesting interviews. Some were from civil rights organizations expressing their support. Many other messages were shared stories of similar experiences they had encountered. Her assistant, Emily, entered, placing another stack of messages on the desk. "Miss Mitchell," Emily said, her voice somewhat hesitant. "Mr. Cooper has arrived. He's been sitting in the lobby for 30 minutes, even though the meeting isn't for another half hour." She paused for a moment and then added, "He looks like he hasn't slept all night." Olivia nodded, glancing at her watch. 8:30 a.m. "What's it like outside?" "There are 3 news vans parked across the street," Emily replied. Social media is still exploding. The video has been shared by many celebrities, and a lot of people are demanding that Mr. Cooper be fired immediately. In the waiting area, James Cooper sat on a chair, constantly adjusting his tie. He really hadn't slept all night. His phone kept ringing with messages from friends and family, all of whom recognized him in the viral video. His sister had called, crying, asking how he could behave like that. Even his mother left a disappointed message. "We need to talk." Mr. David, the terminal manager, entered Olivia's office, looking extremely stressed. "Ms. Mitchell, our public relations team has drafted an official statement, but they need your approval before releasing it." Olivia took the document. "Also, the security company has sent their CEO to meet with you. He's ready to terminate Mr. Cooper's employment contract immediately." She read the statement slowly, then set it aside. Pressing the intercom button, she said, "Emily, please send Mr. Cooper in." The door opened. Cooper entered, looking completely different from his confident demeanor yesterday. His shoulders slumped, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched his security badge. Mr. David was about to leave the room, but Olivia gestured for him to stay. "Please have a seat, Mr. Cooper." She pointed to the chair opposite her desk. Cooper sat down carefully, as if afraid the chair might collapse under his weight. "Ms. Mitchell, I know just saying sorry isn't enough, but I'm truly, truly sorry." His voice was so small that it was almost a whisper. "I've been thinking all night about my actions, and I'm ashamed of how I behaved. Understand if you want to fire me. In fact," his voice choked up, "I've already prepared my resignation letter." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, his hands still trembling. Olivia watched him for a moment before speaking. "Mr. Cooper, do you know why I drove a Honda to the terminal yesterday instead of a luxury car? Why I carried my own luggage and dressed comfortably instead of wearing expensive designer clothes?" Cooper looked confused, but shook his head. "Because I believe that character and actions are more important than appearances." Olivia continued, "I grew up in a working-class family in Atlanta. My parents taught me to judge people by how they treat others, not by what they own or how they look. Unfortunately, yesterday you did the opposite." The room fell silent. Through the window, they could see another news van stopping outside the building. "The easiest thing for me to do now is to accept your resignation, or fire you." Olivia picked up the statement from her desk. "That would certainly please the angry mob on social media. But tell me, Mr. Cooper, what would that actually solve?" Cooper looked up, confusion evident on his face. He had braced himself for immediate dismissal, perhaps even being escorted out of the building, experiencing the same humiliation he had inflicted on others. Instead, Olivia Mitchell asked him a question that would not only change his career, but perhaps even his outlook on life. The next few minutes of this meeting would not appear on social media. The next few minutes of the conversation would not appear on social media, would not become headlines in the news or trending topics on Twitter, but they would bring about significant changes, not only to Mitchell Aviation, but to the entire private aviation industry. Olivia leaned forward, looking directly at Cooper. "Instead of firing you, I want to share something with you." She opened her drawer, taking out an old, worn photo. This photo was taken 15 years ago, on my first day working in the aviation industry. Cooper hesitated to take the photo. In the picture, a young Olivia stood proudly in front of a small charter plane. She wore a simple uniform with a junior accountant badge on her chest. "During my first week," Olivia continued, "a client refused to show me his financial records because he didn't believe I was really an accountant. He asked to see the real accountant 3 times before my manager convinced him that I was qualified." Mr. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Cooper remained focused on the photo, his hands still slightly trembling. "Over the years," Olivia continued, "I've been mistaken for a cleaner, a flight attendant, even a lost passenger. I've been asked to fetch coffee in meetings where I was the leader. I've been denied recognition as a pilot, even after presenting my license." She stood up, walked to the window looking out, at the news vans still parked outside. "What happened yesterday isn't new to me, Mr. Cooper. What's new is that this time someone recorded it." Cooper bowed his head, his eyes starting to well up. I don't know what to say, Ms. Mitchell. I never thought. I didn't realize." "Exactly." Olivia turned to face him. "You didn't think. You only saw what you expected to see based on biases that you may not even be aware of." She turned back to the desk, pressing the intercom button. Emily, please bring in the training program proposal. Emily entered, carrying a thick folder, placing it on Olivia's desk. On the cover was the title, Mitchell Aviation Excellence and Inclusion Training Program. Mr. Cooper, Olivia said, opening the folder, I spent most of last night working on this instead of sleeping. This is a new training program that I want to implement throughout our terminal system, and I want you to be involved in developing it. Cooper looked up, stunned, clearly not expecting this turn of events. Mr. David also leaned forward, showing interest. This program will include real-life scenarios, personal stories from industry experts, and practical guidance to avoid. Bias in the security process is an issue that needs to be changed. Olivia explained, your experience, and more importantly, your mistake, can help prevent others from making similar prejudices. She took out some documents, placing them on the desk. Instead of accepting your resignation, I'm giving you a choice. You can leave, letting this incident follow you forever on social media, or you can stay, help develop this program, and turn your mistake into a lesson for others. Cooper wiped his eyes with his sleeve. You still trust me to do this after what I've done? Sometimes, Olivia replied, the best teachers are those who have learned from their own mistakes. Your actions yesterday were wrong, but your reaction today shows me that you understand that. The question is, what will you do with it? Mr. David spoke for the first time. This program could make a difference, not just here but in the entire aviation industry. Olivia nodded. We'll start with our terminal system, then expand to other aviation companies. Real change comes from education, not just punishment. She handed Cooper a pen and a new set of contracts. This is a new agreement. Instead of working as a regular security officer, you'll become part of the training team. You'll need to complete extensive training on diversity and inclusion before helping us develop and implement this program. She paused, her voice firm. It won't be easy. There will be those who criticize this decision, but I believe everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. Cooper looked at the contract, then at Olivia, then back down at the contract. This moment, this choice, was clearly a turning point in his life. Outside, another news van was parking, unaware that the story they were pursuing had taken an unexpected turn. The choice is yours, Mr. Cooper, Olivia said softly. What will you do? The next few minutes would not only decide James Cooper's future, but could also affect how private aviation terminals across the country handle security and customer service. The pen in his hand suddenly felt heavier than any security badge he had ever worn. 3 months after the incident, the main training room at Mitchell Aviation headquarters had completely changed from a typical corporate office. The walls were filled with powerful images and stories of diversity in the aviation industry, many of them personal experiences of the employees themselves. At the front of the room, James Cooper stood before a group of 20 new security officers, looking confident yet humble. I want to show you something. He held the remote control, pressing the play button on the large screen behind him. The infamous video of the confrontation between him and Olivia Mitchell began to play. Some of the new recruits shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had seen this viral clip on social media. This is me 3 months ago. Cooper's voice was steady. I'm not proud of this moment, but I play it at the beginning of every training session because it's important for you to see how unconscious biases can dictate our actions. The door at the back of the room opened slightly. Olivia Mitchell quietly entered, standing to observe from a distance. None of the trainees noticed her presence. They were all focused on Cooper's story. That day, I thought I was doing my job correctly. He paused the video. I thought I knew what a private jet owner looked like. I thought I knew who belonged here and who didn't. I was completely wrong. And that mistake taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. He switched to the next slide, displaying statistics on diversity in the aviation industry. Currently, 30% of Mitchell Aviation's executives are women. 25% are people of color. We have pilots, engineers, owners from every background you can imagine. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. From the back of the room, Olivia smiled slightly as she watched Cooper confidently deliver the lecture she had helped him build. The training program, now in its 3rd month, had trained more than 200 security personnel across various terminals. Last week, Cooper continued. A young woman wearing jeans and a t-shirt approached the security desk. 3 months ago, I might have been quick to judge. But this time, I followed the new protocol. Greeting her respectfully, checking her documents properly, serving her professionally, regardless of her appearance. He smiled. Turns out, she was a 19-year-old tech entrepreneur who had just sold her startup for millions of dollars. She praised our security team as the most professional she had ever encountered. He looked around the room, his voice full of meaning. That's the goal of this program, to treat everyone with the same respect and dignity. The training room had changed significantly over the past few months. Initially just a simple classroom, it had now become an interactive learning space. One wall featured the phrase unconscious assumptions, where trainees wrote down their personal biases. Another wall displayed personal stories of unconscious bias, and another was filled with thank you notes from passengers who had noticed the positive change in security procedures. Cooper moved on to the practical part of the training. Now, we're going to role-play some situations. Remember, our job is to maintain security, while treating everyone with respect. We're not lowering the standards, we're just applying them fairly to everyone. Olivia watched as Cooper led the role-playing exercises skillfully, correcting errors gently but firmly. The video that could have ended his career had now become a powerful teaching tool. During the break, a new trainee approached Cooper. Mr. Cooper, I saw that video when it first went viral. I never thought I'd be trained by you, but this program, it's really opened my eyes. Cooper nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what happened to me. Sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most important growth, if we're willing to learn from them. Olivia finally stepped forward, making her presence known. The trainees immediately straightened up, recognizing her from the video and company materials. But there was no longer the tension of 3 months ago, only respect and understanding. Mr. Cooper, she said, her voice warm, I heard this program will be implemented at 3 major airlines next month. Cooper's face beamed with pride. That's right, Ms. Mitchell. They've seen the change in our security indicators and passenger satisfaction levels. Now they want to implement a similar program at their terminals. Olivia looked around the room, where the faces were full of enthusiasm. She knew that her decision 3 months ago was right. An incident that could have ended in outrage and job loss had now become a catalyst for a movement of positive change throughout the industry. The next phase of the program would be even more extensive. But at this moment, witnessing Cooper teaching with passion and understanding, she understood that people can change and can help others change. 6 months after the incident, Olivia Mitchell stood on stage at the National Aviation Conference in Chicago. The large ballroom was packed with more than 500 industry leaders, all eager to hear her speech on transforming corporate culture in the aviation industry. As she looked out at the audience, she spotted James Cooper sitting in the front row, wearing a neat suit and his Mitchell Aviation badge. Beside him, Mr. David sat quietly, now the company's head of diversity and inclusion. Both men nodded encouragingly to Olivia. 6 months ago, Olivia began, her voice clear and strong. A video went viral, showing me being denied access to my own private terminal. A wave of recognition spread through the room. Everyone in the aviation industry knew about the incident. But today, I'm not here to talk about that moment. I'm here to talk about what happened afterward and how one incident sparked a revolution in aviation security training. She pressed the button to show the first slide. Since implementing the Excellence and Inclusion program, the number of passenger complaints about security procedures has decreased by 70% across all our terminals. Customer satisfaction has increased by 45%. But the most impressive number is 0. The number of discrimination incidents reported at any Mitchell Aviation facility in the past 5 months. The whole room erupted in applause. In the front row, Cooper sat up straight, pride shining on his face. But the numbers are only part of the story. Olivia continued, the real change lies in people's attitudes and perceptions. And to demonstrate that, I would like to invite a special person to the stage. She turned forward. Mr. James Cooper, would you please come up here? Cooper looked momentarily surprised, but quickly walked onto the stage. Some people in the audience whispered, recognizing him from the famous video. But instead of feeling embarrassed, he walked with confidence. The confidence of someone who had learned, grown, and helped others do the same. Mr. Cooper was the security officer in that video, Olivia told the audience. Today, he leads the training program that has certified more than 500 security personnel nationwide. Richard, would you like to share your perspective? Cooper approached the microphone. 6 months ago, I was the perfect example of everything that's wrong with private aviation security procedures. Today, I'm proud to be part of the solution. His voice was steady as he continued. Ms. Mitchell could have fired me. Instead, she showed me how to turn my mistake into a mission. Olivia returned to the podium. Change doesn't always come from firing someone or publicly shaming them. Sometimes the most powerful change comes from giving someone a chance to learn and... She clicked to the next slide, displaying images of aviation professionals from various backgrounds. Our industry is changing. Our passengers are changing. Our approach to security and service must change with it. The presentation continued with Olivia announcing plans to implement the Excellence and Inclusion Program nationwide. 10 major airlines had already signed up for the training, and many others had expressed interest. After the speech, the crowd swarmed to congratulate her. Olivia noticed a young black woman, probably in her early 20s, patiently waiting to speak to her. As the crowd thinned, the young woman approached. Miss Mitchell, her voice trembled with emotion. I'm a student at flight school. 6 months ago, when I saw that video, I almost gave up. I thought the aviation industry wasn't for people like me. But then I followed your story and saw how you turned it into something positive. You showed me that we can make a change from within. Olivia smiled warmly, opened her briefcase, took out a business card, and wrote something on the back. This is my personal email. When you graduate, send me your resume. Mitchell Aviation is always looking for pilots who understand the importance of breaking down barriers. As the conference drew to a close, Olivia stood with Cooper and David, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Private jets took off and landed at the nearby airport, their paths intersecting in the twilight sky. You know what? Cooper mused. That day at the terminal could have been the worst day of my life. But instead, it turned out to be the most important. Olivia nodded. Sometimes the lowest moments can lift us and others to new heights. The important thing is whether we're willing to take the first step to change. They watched together as a plane soared into the darkening sky. Their work was not yet finished, but they had proven that even the most difficult moments can lead to positive transformations, not just for an individual or a company, but for an entire industry. Even a small act of kindness can change someone's life. Have you ever experienced a moment where compassion or forgiveness changed a story? Share your thoughts in the comments. You never know, your story might inspire many others. If you found this story meaningful, please share it with your friends and family to spread the message of kindness and understanding. Thank you for following and joining us. Every small action can make a big difference. Let's continue to spread good things. Wishing you a peaceful and happy day. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared for the purpose of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any errors, please forgive with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.